usually they're in then some type of transitional space, whether it's leadership role within the organization, whether it's changing careers, wondering, should I even be in this line of work? And it could be anything. It doesn't have to be military, right? Should I even be in this line of work? What's next for me? What should I pivot to if I'm going to pivot, right? There's all these questions about what has worked until now, and then what do I want to do here? I would say blueprint process could be a good fit for them because that's what it does. It helps you to gain the clarity of self, the foundational clarity of what is of core importance to you, and then to help you now make some decisions. It just provides some clarity. So now I'm faced with this huge decision. Okay, what am I going to be doing here? What would my days look like? Okay, is that something that's going to align with who I am, what I want to be doing? Or you could begin to design like what you want, like how do you want your days to look based on this? And then how could I design a job or how could I design my life around that versus what we typically do is find a job because we need money. Now we're in this job, we're getting paid. Now, how do I work the things I really care about? How do I work those around my job? Which is what we don't, that's where we don't want to end up.
Are you looking for more out of life? More fun and adventure? More time? More cash flow? Are you spending your precious time working on someone else's dream? Lydia and I know just how it feels to be trapped in your job, trading your time for money, and missing out on so much of life. We found a better way. If you're interested in generating life changing cash flow and passive income to liberate yourself and get back more time, we have found the best kept secret in real estate and it has totally transformed our lives. It's super easy, extremely low risk, and incredibly high return. And it has the power to unlock the life of your dreams. If you're interested to hear more, hop on over to flippingdirt.us and get more details on one of the quickest and easiest ways to stack up cash flow and escape the trading time for money trap. That's flippingdirt.us.
Welcome to the Cashflow Fight Club podcast. In the Champions Corner edition, I'm Mike Deaton, and together with Lydia, my co-host in life, business, and this podcast, we're taking you into the training room, deep in the dojo, sharing the secrets of what it takes to forge a champion. We're digging deep into mindset mastery, high performance habits, best in class behaviors, and bringing you the tips and techniques that maximize human potential, brought to you from some of the best in the business.
So grab your buds and your seat, hit subscribe, and get ready to up your game. Let's do the show.
Let's do it.
In today's episode, we have the honor of speaking with Brandon Jenkins. Brandon's a full-time professor in the College of Leadership and Ethics at the U.S. Naval War College. He also runs his own coaching program, Tier 1 Coaching, dedicated to empowering investors and entrepreneurs on their personal development journeys.
Brandon focuses on processes to help deliver clarity of purpose, passions, and values in life so they can live fully and with intentionality.
Today, we dive deep into personal development tactics in this episode, and it's one that will surely deliver more clarity and opportunity in your own life. Let's get in the Champions Corner with Brandon Jenkins. Brandon Jenkins, thanks for joining us on the Cashflow Fight Club podcast. We're looking forward to a fun discussion today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to it too, Mike.
Good deal. All right. So maybe as a point of introduction, just give us a little background about where you came from and what led you into where you are today.
Oh, wow, man.
Short.
I could,
just short.
you got to
30
scope me a
seconds.
little bit. I could take that anywhere. So I was born and no, I'm just kidding. 21 years now, active duty in the Navy, helicopter pilot by trade. But I would say the really formative parts of my experience in the Navy that have led me to where I am right now are all the opportunities that I've had to be part of teams, to be on teams, to lead different teams of different sizes throughout my time in the Navy, all the way up to my current role, which is a leader development professor at the Naval War College. And so those experiences, I think, have really shaped who I am and have led me to what I do now, in addition to those duties, which is to coach.
Nice. In your military career, how much, I think a lot of us have, obviously, we all have probably a certain perception of the military, right? This is hierarchical organization. Definitely there's strong team elements. There has to be for things to function and work. But Is there a formal teaming and team education that happens at all ranks and aspects these days? My mindset, if I think back to what I think people think of the military, is it's just do what I say and get it done. But I'm guessing in the modern military, if we want to call it that, there's probably a little more effort to understand team dynamics and maybe even personalities or things like that. But I'm just curious if that's been your experience and what that looks like in the military today and how that shaped you.
Yeah, man. So when I look back on why I kept saying yes to staying in the military and continuing on that path as long as I have, that team aspect of it is the central theme as to why I've stayed. I
Hmm.
grew up playing sports. I didn't have a dad, never met my dad. Played sports from a young age all the way through college, played baseball a little bit at college at the Naval Academy. And so my teams were extremely formative growing up. And that is where I learned how to interact with my teammates
Okay.
and how to interact with my coach and just really learn to appreciate that on a team, you have a common purpose, a common mission, a common goal, and you work together, each at the individual level, fulfilling your individual role, but in a manner that all comes together so that as the team you achieve your mission. And so at the time when I was a senior in high school, I probably couldn't have articulated it this way that I was going into the military because of the team aspect. But when I reflect on my career, it was absolutely that draw. In the military is very much team oriented. And so it was interesting how you phrased it or you opened up this discussion, and it is hierarchical. And there is a point at which, depending on your role on the team, sometimes you are in a role where you're expected to follow an order. But it goes back to what I was just saying. We each have our role to play. And so the longer you're in and the longer you're on your teams, you realize that depending on your position, you may actually be in a position of leadership where your role is actually to get the other teammates to better understand their roles and to work together towards that common mission. And so that requires a whole different skill set than just understanding the procedures and following the orders. It actually requires the human being able to work with the human element, to work with the people on your team, to recognize that everyone's unique and has different perspectives. And the longer you're in, the higher you go up, the more opportunities you have to work in that capacity on the team.
Yeah, that's what I was curious about. Just I don't know what the size of the military is, but I would imagine similar to any organization, it's very hard to reach the entire organization with a certain level of training. But yeah, the higher you go, for sure, it sounds like there's a lot of effort put into that. But maybe even more so in the military. And I've listened to a few different people that came out of the military on other podcasts or books, and they talk about these efforts to really integrate a team and have them work together. But if you think about it in the military, there's the very real threat of people getting wounded or killed in action and other people having to step in. So you almost have to be prepared to function as a team and to step into different roles, be them followers, leaders, teammates, those kind of things. I guess it really makes much more urgent need to have that capability. And probably even it's a competitive advantage in ways if you maybe compare it to other forces around the world.
Yeah, you said it, right? There are many similarities to corporate world and other businesses, but at the end of the day, the military has a unique mission. And what you just described is, in a nutshell, that the teams in the military have to be able to understand what their greater mission is, what their greater purpose is, but then they have to be empowered to go off and operate and do what they're supposed to do. And sometimes that means getting cut off from communication, right, from higher leadership. And so they have to be able to self-assess, self-correct, pivot, right, make changes when they need to and not rely on, hey, I got to do steps 1 through 10. That's it. Because things are going to change really quickly. And so the team needs to be able to adapt to that at all
Mm.
levels. And so we were talking about the higher you go, the more opportunity you have to lead people. But on the team at every level, each individual, the team will be better off if every person on that team, no matter what their rank is or how new they are, that they have some capability to think on their own and pivot when they need to and they have new information.
Yeah, it really makes sense. Let's carry that forward a bit now into your life today. So it sounds like you're in both worlds still a bit. So you're still have some military duties, but you have a private practice now in coaching? And
Yeah. So yeah, 100%. I just put in my retirement request a couple weeks ago, actually. So I have one more year in the Navy. Again, I'm a leader development professor at the Naval War College. And just like it sounds, I facilitate classes for military and interagency, joint interagency, like FBI, State Department, et cetera, leaders who come in, and I facilitate leader development over a 10-week course. So I have that. And then on the side, as I prepare to exit the Navy, I also have a coaching practice. And in that coaching practice, right now, I currently do two things. One is I help people through what's called blueprint process. And I didn't make that up. My coach, she came up with the blueprint process, but essentially it's I help people uncover core passions, values, skills, purpose, cause, really gain the clarity about those things, what's most important to them, so that then they can begin to align their life, align decisions so that they're moving in that direction that matters most to them. And then I also help with leaders who are having growth challenges, typically transitional. So what's gotten them to one place now isn't necessarily going to be the skills or what they need to take them to the next level. And so I'll work with leaders to help them unpack that, uncover what they need to do next. Again, I don't tell them what to do. I help them uncover for themselves what they need to do. Yeah. So that's what my coaching practice focuses on.
gotcha. In that coaching practice, are you focusing or trying to look at a particular niche, or is it fairly open? Are you corporate leaders or anybody? Or
Yeah, good question. It's not necessarily a certain industry or a certain position. It's more, are you facing a transition? So for blueprint process, are you facing a transition? Are you wondering, man, why am I still on this path that I'm on? What is it about this that I really love? So in the military, for me, I call it the golden path fallacy, because in the military is like prime example of this. You can get into the military and you can follow the footpath of your mentors. You can say, they did this job at year 12, they did this at year 16, they did, right? And you could do the exact same types of jobs that they did and potentially end up in the same spots that they did. So if you look at your mentor and they're successful and you want to be like them, you can follow this path, and they call it the golden path. To me, that's a fallacy, because it implicates that there's just one right path for everybody who enters. There's only one right path that you can take that's going to lead to fulfillment and success as defined by the organization that you're in. And in this case, it happens to be the military. And so I hit a point around the 15-year mark-ish, right around there, where I was questioning, do I want to keep doing this? Why am I still doing this? I was successful in the eyes of the military. And there was something about it that I liked, clearly, but I couldn't articulate what it was. And I was getting ready to go into my greatest position of leadership, to be a commanding officer of a squadron. And I realized I have to have this clarity. I have to get the clarity. I have to know what I stand for at a deep core level, because that is what a leader is going to lean on when there is no book telling you what to do. When you're in a leadership position, there is no manual for how to handle some of these personnel issues that come up. There's just not. And so if you don't have a core foundation from which to lead from, you're going to have trouble. And so back to your question of who am I usually working for? Or you didn't say avatar, but I think of it, right?
Yep.
Who am I looking for? It's just people who have a growth mindset. One, they're curious, they're humble, they recognize that, sure, I may be successful, but I don't have all the answers. I still have a lot to learn. And usually they're in then some type of transitional space, whether it's leadership role within the organization, whether it's changing careers, wondering, should I even be in this line of work? And it could be anything. It doesn't have to be military, right? Should I even be in this line of work? What's next for me? What should I pivot to if I'm going to pivot, right? There's all these questions about what has worked until now, and then what do I want to do here? So there's this transitional space. Those are the primary folks who are drawn to me.
And in that transformation, let's call it, process, is that the blueprint process that you use to help guide people from point A to point B, tease out some of the things to get there.
Yeah, exactly. If somebody told me that the way I just described it to you, that's how they were talking to me, then I would say blueprint process could be a good fit for them because that's what it does. It helps you to gain the clarity of self, the foundational clarity of what is of core importance to you. And then to help you now make some decisions. This is my blueprint behind me, by the way, for anyone watching. I don't know if this is on YouTube or just on Apple Podcasts or whatever, but it just provides some clarity. So now I'm faced with this huge decision. Okay, what am I going to be doing here? What would my days look like? Okay, is that something that's going to align with who I am, what I want to be doing? Or you could begin to design like what you want, like how do you want your days to look based on this? And then how could I design a job or how could I design my life around that versus what we typically do is find a job because we need money. Now we're in this job, we're getting paid. Now, how do I work the things I really care about? How do I work those around my job? Which is what we don't. That's where we don't want to end up.
But that's the path. That's the golden
Yeah.
path, as you call it. It's the American dream, if you will. I followed it. I watched my daughters, they're young adults now, put their feet down that same path and get caught up in consumerism and all these things. And I think it all too often leads to exactly as you described. I went through what you described. I don't know if it was a 15-year or 20 or whatever, but I had a moment where I was like, well, what am I doing here? Is executive leadership really what I want out of life? And for me, it wasn't. And I think for a lot of people, it's that way. There's a lot of people that are fulfilled by it and that have different life circumstances and they have different drivers, obviously, and values and core beliefs and things that take them there. But I hear it time and again, especially now that Lydia and I have become entrepreneurs and we have a different circle of a network. There's so many people that pivoted later in life that decided, why am I plugged into this organization doing what somebody else wants, somebody else's mission, working their time schedule, and these are not my values. And
Yeah.
things happen.
Brandon, do you mind giving us a little more details about the blueprint process that you take your clients through? Maybe for listeners that have never heard about the blueprint process.
Is there a high level path through those 45 circles?
Yeah, right. So the circles behind me are the result of the research phase of blueprint process that we go through. Essentially, it's one-on-one, 45 minutes to an hour session for about 2 months of research. And those one-on-one sessions are, we're talking about what kind of decisions are you making? What activities are you engaging in? And you're telling me about these and I'm just listening and I'm extracting what's energizing you about that. And we're by listening and pulling those out, we're getting to the core values that are driving you to do these things. What's de-energizing me? Well, that tells me a lot. Like it tells me that you're doing something that is in conflict with what you would prefer to be doing. And so we have these discussions over this research phase and I'm pulling all of these out. And then before it goes to print, I go back through it with the client and I want to make sure the client looks at these things that I've been listening and jotting down, but now I want the client to look at them. They really need to resonate with the client because I, like every other human, I have biases. So I may listen to you tell me a story and jot something down, and maybe I put my own bias on it. And so then I give the client the chance to look at it and talk through it. Very often the client will be like, no, I don't really get that. Can we talk about that some more? Absolutely. Let's talk about it. And we make sure that it's the client and not me. So that's extremely important. But then once the client is satisfied with everything on the digital version, we go to print. Once we have the print copy, now we start to take this larger blueprint and we start to filter it down. So what we're looking for now is in this time of your life, what is jumping out at you? What is resonating with you? So this is already very important to you, but now you're going to filter it down even more and you're going to recognize and become aware of what really is speaking to you at this time in your life. And ultimately, as part of the process, we get down to your tower. But for all intents and purposes, your tower is at this time in your life, what are you here for? What are you meant to be doing for your people? And your people are just the folks you're meant to help, the folks you're meant to serve based on what your blueprint is. That's it in a nutshell. It takes about 4 to 6 months or so to get through the process. And the discrepancy is simply some clients on some weeks, they come to the conversation and we go where they want to go. And sometimes we'll spend the whole time just maybe unpacking one specific challenge. And so we don't pull out a whole bunch of new stuff. And then other sessions, we may get a whole bunch of passions, values, innate skills. So it takes 4 to 6 months or so.
Yeah, I like the fact that there's a structure behind the process, the blueprint, and go at your own pace. I believe, if I remember correctly, you and I, in a previous conversation, you made the comment about answers being within us. And
Mhm.
I'm a firm believer in that as well. I've actually had, in my corporate career, I went through some coaching programs and leadership development. And I remember young in my career, there was I don't remember where I came across the concept, but there were these two different leadership paradigms. And one is leadership from a, let's call it a content perspective, right? You're a subject matter expert and you get
Mhm.
put into leadership roles and you lead because you know how things should be done or how you think they should be done. And then that transitions usually into a contextual leadership role where, okay, I don't need to know how to be a software programmer. I just need to know how to get the right answers out of you and get you moving. And I'm a firm believer that also as coaches, we're more facilitators in pulling out this and that blueprint, and that structure really helps, it sounds, achieve that by focusing on different domains or different areas, right? Values and dislikes and likes and actions and activities. And then ultimately pulling that into some sort of an action plan or something meaningful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
So each session with a client is, like I said, they drive it, which is why it can take 4 to 6 months. It's because I'm not telling them what to do. I want to hear what's energizing. And that's actually one of my favorite questions to open up a conversation is, hey, what's energizing you? And there's a lot of stuff that energizes us. And sometimes that comes out in the form of de-energizing. And so just what are you feeling? And maybe what's on your mind? And then we go from there. We go from there. And I'm just asking questions to help the client reflect on that, maybe become aware of what before they were just running through the motions. We've all been there, right? We're just running through the motions. But if you stop and reflect on why are you doing the things you're doing, what is making you take those steps, you become aware of all these other thoughts that you have running around in your head and all these other beliefs that you have and these reasons for doing the things you're doing. All I'm doing is asking questions to help you uncover those. And then when it comes to blueprint process, I'm writing them down so that then we can see those, especially those things that are energizing for you or that are most important to you. But yeah, exactly. It's within you. I'm just helping you uncover it. And if I can take it to the leadership level, right? One of my favorite parts of the leader development course that I facilitate is the idea of coaching and peer coaching in a coaching mindset when it comes to being a leader. You don't have to be a professional coach, right, to use a coaching mindset or a coaching style. And all that is, it starts with a mindset that my teammates have it within them to do the job. My teammates have the potential in them. They have the capability inside them. And so my role as a leader is to help them see that, is to help evoke that awareness, to make sure that I'm strengthening their self-belief and their agency, and that they know they're empowered to then use that to accomplish whatever the mission may be. And using a coaching style is, in my opinion, the most effective way to do that. Asking versus telling.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
From your experience working with people, what do you see are the common traits of people that have success navigating through the process,
Which process are you talking about?
the blueprint process, or what are the
Transforming from a stuck
Yes.
state to something, or they're
Yeah, that's a
Are there
great.
some common traits beyond the fact that I would imagine the people that come to you, they're already open. They feel like they need help. They feel they have a certain amount of humbleness inside of them and they're open. But
Yes.
what do you see are other common traits?
I know you're saying other, but I am going to foot stomp on humility because I believe humility and a growth mindset are the two core traits. And let me define those for you the way I define them because I think each individual probably has a different definition of those. So humility is simply, hey, I'm confident in my abilities and skills and what I've learned, but I understand that there's a lot more out there and there's a lot more that maybe I don't know, that I surely don't know. And so I'm asking questions like, what can I learn from this? How can we do this better? What's another approach that might be more fitting for this context or whatever? So it's just that curiosity of, hey, I might not know it all. You're very confident. You recognize that we're human, so we can only know so much. And that's most of the time based on our experiences and what we've absorbed in some other fashion. And then growth mindset, the way I define that is this belief that I can continue to learn new things and develop and grow throughout my life. I'm not done when I graduate college. It's like the antithesis of you can't teach an old dog mix. Like that's the opposite of a growth mindset. Because I believe that we can continue. You can teach me new tricks until some cognitive impairment or the day that I die. So I think those are the two foundational pieces for somebody who would really get a lot out of the process because they are accepting of it and are willing to let themselves be changed and transformed throughout the process versus somebody who might not have that mindset and they would get stuck on, I've always been an expert. Just give me the answer. What's the black and white answer? That's probably least likely to enjoy the process and to be transformed by it.
Yeah, make that.
Yes, I loved the definition that you gave. And I think what really resonated with me when you said that to be humble doesn't mean that you're not confident. It's just recognizing that there's so much more that you can learn. And especially when you feel stuck or you feel like you came to a point where you just need a little help, a little push from someone that has gone a little further, it's so helpful.
Yeah, I agree.
Shifting a little bit, what are some favorite practices or tools that you like to use either personally or in your practice to help with mindset and keeping a certain amount of positivity or centeredness or anything like that?
Great question. So I would say this is unique to me. Anytime I offer a tool, it's in the context of, hey, here's a tool that I use. This may or may not work for you because again, you're unique. I don't know what your day-to-day is like. I don't know the stressors you're facing. But I can say that for me, mindfulness, I try to do mindfulness practice each day. Sometimes I don't do it, but I
And is
try
that
to start my
meditation?
day.
Is that when you say mindfulness, is that meditation or?
Oh yeah. So meditation, but I consider mindfulness just anytime you're just trying to be present,
Being
focus
present?
on one thing, like potentially the breath or focus on an object or whatever that may be. And then our thoughts are going to start popping in and our mind's going to want to wander and it's just like non-judgmentally recognizing that and bringing it back to whatever you were focusing on. Again, no judgment because it's going to happen. Just bringing it back. And every time you bring it back, that's like that you're lifting weights for your mind. So that's what I mean when I say mindfulness. That helps me stay present, be focused, which helps me in all kinds of different situations, leadership situations, coaching, focusing on the client, you name it. I think being able to be present and focus is a skill that we all need more of.
Yeah, I would agree. And I forget who I heard put it recently, similar to the military. Preparation before conflict is fundamental and key. It's the same with mindfulness or any type of practice like that. You really have to put the reps in before you get into the situation. Otherwise, you're not prepared. You're not going to successfully come through it, most likely. If you haven't, that's the intent of a mindfulness or meditation or whatever on a daily basis, is that you're getting those reps in and building the muscle before you get into the crisis moment.
Yeah, 100%.
You talked about a growth mindset earlier being fundamental. It reminds me of, I'm going to guess you're familiar with Carol Dweck's book, Mindset. It talks about growth mindset. Any other, I see behind you, I think Start With Why is the title I think I'm picking up there, but any other good books or things that?
Yeah. So it depends on where you are in your life and what you're looking to get out of the book. I used to be a read for quantity type of guy, right? I'd set annual goals. I want to read X amount of books. And usually it was something crazy, for me, crazy, 100 books or something like that. I would never hit the goal. I slowly have changed to, no, it's not about the quantity. Now I try to choose books that are aligned with whatever my current growth goal is. And so this year, actually, I'm trying to develop a couple things, but the main thing is I'm trying to develop me as a coach, to develop my capacity to coach people. And I read Coaching for Performance by Sir John Whitmore. I'm reading The Inner Game of Work by Timothy Galway. Those are two excellent books on coaching. The two up here, Start With Why. That's like fundamental to, you want to talk about blueprint, core purpose, passions, values, skills. You're trying to uncover essentially the why that Simon Sinek talks about, right? Your blueprint is like the why. This is the why I'm doing this, right? And so that's going to attract the people you're meant to serve because they're going to resonate with your why. And so that was a very influential book for me just to start down the path of introspection, which is another tool, by the way, I would say is important. Again, depends on the person, but reflection. And you don't need a coach to do that, right? You can be reflective and think about what's important to you and write it down. And then Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. So the last tool I would say is having something, and it doesn't have to be Marcus Aurelius or Stoicism, but having something that you can go to and read, reflect on, pray, meditate, whatever you want to call it, but that there's a lot of like wisdom in there, from what I love about Marcus Aurelius is 2000 plus years ago. And if you read Meditations, it's a journal he wrote to himself, just reminding himself of how to live, how to be a better human, how to treat people right, how to be a good leader. You want to talk about humility. This is at that time in history, one of the most powerful people on the planet, commanding the Roman army. He was Roman emperor, commanding the Roman army, and is writing in his journal, no, I've got to treat people with grace. People are going to upset me today, but if they're human, I've got to treat them with grace. Like just right, the struggles that we all as leaders today in the 21st century face, he wrote to himself back in 160 AD or whatever. That's been an extremely influential book, and kind of reading that through time. I started Daily Stoic, reading the Daily Stoic too by Ryan Holiday.
Yeah.
Through COVID every morning. That's a daily reader, like a calendar reader. Like each day there's a new message. Yeah. So I'll stop there because I've got books here. I got books over there.
No, just a few standouts, and that's great. I pick up a through line there of really reflection, introspection, and I haven't read Meditations, but I'm very familiar with it and a lot of the passages out of it and the concept. And on the one hand, there's a little bit of a paradox. On the one hand, I think we think, wow, somebody 2000 years ago having these thoughts and reading or writing these timeless observations. But on the other hand, I think we've lost a lot of that introspection and reflection, not the capability, but just I don't think we do a lot of that as individuals much anymore. Life is so busy and there's so much vying for our attention. But for me, that's where coaching and therapy really come into play. It's just like having a coach for athletics or anything. It's almost a forced practice of sorts, right? Somebody comes and they go, okay, now I've allocated this block of time. We're going to sit down and go through some introspection or some reflection and observations and do the deep work that, at least my perception is that I obviously don't know what life was like back in the time of Marcus Aurelius, but it does feel like there were heavier thinkers and there were at least a class of people that had time to sit down and reflect and think deep thoughts and come up with a lot of these observations that are timeless, that survive and proliferated even in the last few years. With Ryan Holiday's done a good job of promoting the values of Stoicism and some of those things. I know a lot of people practice it, but yeah, it's a lot of great books you reference there. And I do think that's maybe the most important fundamental tool is somehow reflecting on our life. And your blueprint does just that, right? It's the coaching practices I've studied under are values-based coaching. It's like lead with, so you have to sit down and identify, what are my values? How do I rank them? What are most important to me? And then everything folds out from that. Am I following those on a day-to-day basis? Am I making decisions rooted in those values, or are my decisions being taken because of something else and all of those? So I think it's definitely a noble practice, and a lot of good books written around there.
Yeah. It's funny because we're talking about books and we're talking about if you want to lead from values, then you have to know what they are, right? You have to have teased them out. But it's something I always I remember I've had great leaders. I've had some less than great leaders. And the ones that were always, I called them book of the month leadership. Because books are very valuable.
Yeah.
But not like, they're not meant, in my opinion, they're not meant to read a book and now just copy and paste what the book said in whatever organization I'm just going to copy and paste. Because again, why? Your organization is completely different than the author of this book or what the context of their life at the time they wrote it. And so it's more about getting clarity on yourself And B, like honing your ability to extract principles from things. Like when you read a book or you listen to a podcast, what are the principles at play and how might they or might not they actually apply to me, my situation, or maybe they apply to me in different situations, but I can't take it to work because I have this unique environment at work. So it's like honing that ability to extract principles and apply principles to things versus copy and paste.
Critical reasoning and
Yeah.
applying your own logic and even reflection, right? Digesting some content and then reflecting on how is it appropriate or how might it not be appropriate in exactly the way that you laid out there. Yeah, I often will tell people I feel very fortunate with my education because it seems like the schools in the classes that I were in, were heavily focused on reasoning and thinking and even writing. I hated it at the time, but it developed a skill of thinking through an argument, putting a beginning, a middle, and end around something, or debating a point counterpoint or things like that. And so, yeah, I feel very fortunate to have gotten that early in life and to develop some of those skills. But yeah, I think a lot of those book of the month is an interesting phrase, but it also pulls you in different directions, right? Because you read one here and you start down that, and then you get another snippet and you're like, oh, I go over here. And I think that happens in the business world as well. There's all these shiny objects out there of how to go about marketing or how to go about different elements. And we can get caught if we aren't centered on the North Star or the values or something, a higher perspective that's leading us in a certain direction.
I wanted
Question?
to say that it really takes also mindfulness to know as a leader where to apply the right information or what to the certain context and to your organization or the company that you work for or whatever you do. But it takes a certain mindfulness. And we mentioned copy and pasting. I think people feel it. If someone just copies and pastes and then you just try to bring a certain information that is not relevant at all for that moment in time or for that situation or for that industry or company.
Yeah. People, that's back to why I hired a coach for myself. Very introspective guy at that time, but was just like, if I'm not crystal clear on myself first, my teammates are going to see right through that. And when we have to do really hard things that nobody's going to want to do because we're in the military, man, it's a lot better if you're yourself, your people know that you're yourself, and they may not like the news, but they know it's you and you're being authentic, you're being true to yourself, and you're not just copy and pasting to try to get through it.
Yeah, so true. For anybody that might be interested to hear more, what's the best way to get in touch with you or find you?
Two best ways: LinkedIn. So find me on LinkedIn, Brandon L. Jenkins. I post every day on LinkedIn, and so I'm very active there. And then tier1coaching.com. That's where you can learn a little bit more about blueprint process and how you might work with me if you wanted to.
Okay, cool.
It's wonderful. We like to end each episode with a little bit of gratitude. So is there anybody, or it doesn't have to be just one person, that you want to shout out to that has been instrumental in your life?
Yeah, there's a lot,
Yeah.
but two that come to mind right now, actually. One, of course, my wife, who is my best friend, my advisor, and she helps ground me as well. So when we talk about tools to help center us and ground us and get ready to tackle the day or whatever your goal is, my wife, for sure, Julie. But then something else I'm grateful for is I just got back from going to my good friend Adam's retirement ceremony. He just had a retirement ceremony. He retired from after 20 years in the Marines. And I was able to take some leave of my own and travel to Virginia to go to his retirement ceremony. And I'm super grateful that I'm just in a position that I was able to go do that and support him.
Nice. Love those. We'll make sure and put those down in the show notes for anybody that wants to hear more and get in touch with you. But yeah, we really want to thank you. We're grateful for you sharing a little time and wisdom on our podcast, and wish you nothing but the best going forward.
Thanks a lot. I really appreciate the opportunity. I had fun.
For those of you joining us today, we hope you enjoyed this time in the Champions Corner as much as we did. Got some awesome takeaways, and most importantly, we'll take action to continue living your best life and maximizing your potential. Mindset is such an important aspect of life, and when coupled with action, delivers undeniably powerful results.
Please subscribe to the podcast to hear from more great guests and get the latest mindset mastery insights and cash flow matchups.
Again, thank you so much for investing your time with us, and we look forward to seeing you next time on the Cashflow Fight Club podcast.